Hey guys, welcome back to another video. My name is Miasma, and this is going to be another list video. Today I'm going to talk about my count 'em, five anime that I dislike that a lot of people seem to enjoy, or shows that I've talked about that I get flack for disliking. Sort of that stuff. This is a contrast to the last list video that I did for my good friend Wartbait. It's sort of like a part two. He's a good guy and a patron. And if you'd like to join the Patreon as well, I'll have a link to that down below. There's also a Discord server to go along with that as well, and you can recommend video topics for me to do here on the channel. And so, without further ado, I guess let's talk about the shows that I don't like, that a lot of people seem to like for some reason. Now, this is, I guess, let me set some parameters. I have to have, finished, I believe, all of these I've finished the show, or at least a season. I believe all of these I have finished. So there are shows that I'm not super into, like Attack on Titan or Sword Art Online, but I have not watched those until their conclusion. So if you're looking for the meme of those shows to be part of this, I do think they're overrated, but that's sort of a different thing. I don't really want to judge them until I've seen them sort of all the way through, like I have with these. So number 5. This one was one that everybody was talking about a few years ago, and I was very, very late to get onto the train of watching the show. I think I only watched it maybe a year and a half ago, and it was just everybody flipped out over the OP, which is pretty cool, and then just they made it seem like it was so interesting and innovative and cool, and I just really disagree. Death Parade, this was just really boring for me. I might sound like a broken record when I talk about these shows, because I'm going to talk about dull characters, or like a dull aesthetic, or something that it's just not gravitating my attention. It's not making me want to watch the show. And nothing really in Death Parade made me want to click on the next episode. We all know that feeling when it's you get to the end of an episode, and then you get to the ED, and you want to click on next episode very, very fast. I did not get that feeling once in this show. For those that don't know, it's about a weird paranormal realm, afterlife realm, bar where people go and they get to play this game that ties into events that happened in their life, and based upon their actions, and the result, how that game goes, how they play the game themselves, that determines I guess their afterlife or something. It's been a little bit. Someone's gonna correct me, I'm sure. But yeah, it's boring. It's very much it seems just very snooty and looking down its nose at sort of things. And I get it. It treats the shitty characters like they're shitty. It looks okay at times, but I mean, a lot of it is just this dark bar that really gets old after a couple episodes, to look at least in my opinion. None of the characters are very interesting. You get the main bartender guy, this dude with the white hair. He's very, very boring. And a lot of people might say, well, Miasma, you really like Brandon Heat, and that's kind of a soft-spoken, monotone dude. Yeah, but that guy's story is really interesting within Gungrave. And this guy, by the time you, learn anything about him, or he gets any, layers to himself, it's way too late, in my opinion. The OP of the show is pretty cool. I get why people were hyped for that, but for me, I thought the show was really boring. I really don't like episodic stuff, and while this does have, the overarching story of this purple hair girl that's working at the bar, I think, and then there's other people that work at the bar as well, and you kind of learn how the bar is tied to humanity and stuff like that. So I guess there is sort of an overarching thing, but every episode is sort of a different person introduced to play a different game, and you don't care about any of them. None of them are that interesting. None of them are that cool. But yeah, I don't know. It was just a bore fest for me. The only episodic stuff that I've ever really liked was something like Samurai Champloo. Even that has a very overarching sort of story to it. or Cowboy Bebop, Shinichiro Watanabe, who we will actually talk about on this list, by the way. But that's sort of a spoiler for number 4, ironically enough, Zankyo no Terror, or Terror in Residence. This is a really short, 11-episode show from director Shinichiro Watanabe, famous for Cowboy Bebop and Samurai Champloo. And it's just, the theme of it would be really cool. It's about these 2 terrorist guys who blow up buildings, but they... Every place that they blow up is the people are evacuated. They're empty or abandoned. Or so they aren't killers per se. They're terrorists in the sake of making a point in blowing up architecture, specific architecture pertaining to the plot. But I don't want to spoil it too much. But so. It seems like it would be cool because you're constantly asking questions of why they're doing these things, and it's only 11 episodes, and I mean it gets to its point eventually, but the characters again are so boring, and there's also this there's this extra girl character who is kind of their hostage / friend, sort of. And she has sort of an interesting backstory that they talk about a little bit, but she's even more dull than the other 2. At least the jokey guy has it's cool. He has a sort of interesting personality. Rides his motorcycle around. The show looks very good. The show has an amazing soundtrack by I believe Yoko Kanno, also of Cowboy Bebop soundtrack fame. But it's just they're so dull. You don't care about any actions that the characters do. The show makes it out to be these guys might be doing something noble, and when you learn why they're doing what they're doing, I suppose, but just getting there, it's just not interesting. And the show introduces this cop character who is without a doubt the most generic stereotypical cop character I've ever seen in anime. I thought he the fact that he exists in the show to me is a joke. He has, 5 o'clock shadow, and he's really disheveled, and, he wears his tie loose, and, he has a checkered past with his, family, and he works too hard, he's dedicated. He is the ultimate stereotypical cop. In a show that's supposed to, I feel like they were trying to, break a mold with, having these, the idea of terrorism, without, while, trying to not kill people, and it's can certain acts of terrorism be viewed as this is a positive thing for the world? Interesting concept, but then you shove stereotypical characters on top of boring characters on top of really bizarre characters as we get later on when you meet some characters that are tied into the main 2 guys' past, but they don't make it. They're bizarre, but they don't make it that much interesting, and they're not in the show for that long. And then by the end of it, do you feel like you're resolved? Sort of, I guess. I mean, it didn't feel like a roller coaster that I wanted to ride, and I was very glad when I got off. So, unfortunately, this is the worst Watanabe show I've ever seen. The guy did an awesome job with Bebop and Champloo. I don't know what the hell went on with this, but I know a lot of people like it. I don't. Number 3, speaking of pissing people off, this is regarded as a classic, and one YouTuber says it's one of the top 5 anime you need to watch before you die. Trigon. If you've been watching me for a while, you know that I constantly sort of joke about this show. I've only sat through it once, so I will say that. But it is one of the most disappointing anime that I've ever gone into. I went into it with such hype, and it is referred to as a classic anime. It's from the 90s. It's shoot 'em up action show when I'm assuming not a lot of them might have been around at that time. Probably laid a lot of groundwork down. The character designer for this was the same as one of my favorite shows, Gungrave, which is a shoot 'em up show I think that does that kind of thing a lot better. I think you should watch Gungrave instead of Trigon. It's far superior. But where Trigon really lets me down is it has an okay. It has a pretty good episode 1. People always comment on that. Like the episode 1, I was sort of interested in that, and then it has just like, I think it's like I don't know if it's 24 episodes long or so, or 26, but it just has these like pockets of episodes that like you just like shit happens, but like who cares? Like a lot of the enemies that he fights are pretty lame. Like I'm not really into Vash. First of all, I think Vash is like a very annoying main character. I hate the main character that is very very strong but fucking like goofy like 95% of the time. I've never finished Kenshin. I've only seen some of it. Like, but Kenshin in Rurouni Kenshin, I guess he sort of has a reason to like act while he acts, and I guess people might be able to argue that for Vash. But I just hate when like it's like they have like goofy, dumb slapstick. Abel Nightroad is another interesting person that's like this in Trinity Blood, where you have this character who will like fall over and like get bonked on the head by stupid shit and just like be over the top silly, but then at like the drop of a dime they are this ridiculous killer. Like, I get maybe you're trying to hide like your true nature, but I don't think you have to go like that far. I think that's too much of an anime thing. I think that's too much. If there's an aspect of anime that I don't like, it is probably that. I've mentioned it before. I hate the over the top silliness of it. And I don't mind like some slapstick stuff. One of my favorite American cartoons is Ed, Edd n Eddy. Tons of that. But like none of those characters are these like killers. None of them are like meant to be like respected and like you're supposed to like look at them like this guy's going to save the day, right? Like reliable. Like I don't want to rely on Vash. And then you get to Knives and that whole thing, the character Knives, and whew, that is some weird shit. The two girls from the insurance company or whatever, they're okay. They provide some laughs. Like the show, it's not all like terrible. I just think it's very much overhyped, and I think that people put this on a pedestal that it doesn't need to be, just because I think of like when it came out. I also think it. I mean, it's from the '90s, but even I think it kind of looks like shit. But like I get it. It's from the '90s. Anime budgets weren't as big back then. Maybe if it got remade, it'd be better. But I think it's just overall my kind of bias for not liking this sort of character. If you like Trigon, I guess that's your thing. But this is my list, so sorry. At number 2, we have one that my good friend Bob Samurai recently talked about in his video, Future Diary, or Mirai Nikki. Now, this is a show that a lot of people liked when it first came out. It seems edgy. It seems cool. It's like these people with these like diary powers, and it's a battle to become God with these weird cell phone powers. But it gets really fucking like, I almost want to say convoluted, but like just like there's a really dumb like twist sort of toward the end that just like is weird and doesn't like make like a ton of sense, and just like it's got this Yandere, the character in I believe her name is, and Yuki, the main guy, is also really really boring. Broken record with me, boring characters. I wanted him just to die, because there's other characters that are a little like not far more interesting. Nobody is really interesting in the show, but like more interesting than him. Like the girl that blows up stuff with the eye patch, I'm pretty sure I remember her being like more interesting. And then it gets to a point where like, it starts out with like a couple people with these cell phones. They're gonna battle it out with these powers to become God, right? These have the supernatural abilities, as it were, or like weird powers. And then like you get like halfway through, and then everybody and their brother's getting a cell phone. Like, oh, here, you're this guy that was in 2 scenes. Here's a cell phone. Oh, hey, you're the Uber driver that drove us over here. Here's a cell phone, dude. Here's a power. And then you get to that twist part, and it's just not interesting. There are parts of it. There are some like cool gore parts. I like gore. I like some of the the violence that the show has. It's willing to go that extra step, I suppose, but it also does it in cringy ways. Like these two characters fuck. That or like they try to. Or I forget if that's a spoiler. Too bad. but they're like really young and it's really awkward and it shows too much and made me feel uncomfortable. So don't bore me and make me feel uncomfortable, anime. And number one, this is the one that's going to piss people off, I think, the most, because when I did my review of it, people weren't too fond of my reaction to Shinsekai Yori, or From the New World. I don't understand how this show is so praised. Like, it triggers me. I see other YouTubers talk about this. The only one I've seen talk about this, like, super accurately is, and if you might dislike him, that's fine, Digibro. He has a video about how this is worse than SAO. I haven't finished SAO, so I can't really talk about it, but, like, I even think that my review of this show is too generous. Like, after even watching, like Digi's sort of, like, analysis of it, I think it opened up my eyes more to, like, some of the bullshit that, like, lightly pissed me off in the story. But it's basically about this, like, fucking weird, like, future world where everything's sort of, like, regressed for some reason to, like, look like, almost, like, feudal, not feudal, but, like old school, like Japan aesthetic. But people have psychic powers, and it's about this, like, group of kids, almost, like, reminiscent of something like Stephen King's It, where, like, you have this group of kids, and it follows them throughout years of time as they are, like, gaining their abilities and learning a lot about, like, there's a lot of, like, mystery to this world, which seems like it could be interesting. Once again, the characters are awful. None of them are interesting. The main girl has, like, moments where she's kind of cool. There's this other guy character that she likes who gets, like, shafted and is, like, gone for a majority of the show. He's okay. I hate everybody else. They're all trying to fuck each other. It's really weird. The show has this weird, like, play with, like, sexual tension with, like, adolescence and, like, everybody's trying to fuck one another. You know, it's got random yaoi, random yuri, which, if you like yuri, you like yaoi, have at it. That's fine. Not here to say that that shouldn't exist or anything. Have at it. That's fun. But I feel like it's just kind of in here as, like, a fan service sort of thing. Like, I feel like it's just in here for, like, the lulz. Like, it's just like, oh, well, you know, people might experiment when they're young or whatever. But that doesn't, like, it doesn't do anything for me for, like, the overarching story. Like, I feel like it's just unnecessary. Like in Mirai Nikki when, like, they're doing their thing. It's just sort of unnecessary. The powers, I'm a big fan of powers. They just seem kind of lame for a while. They get better later on, and I get it, they're supposed to be developing. But you don't care about these people that are boring developing. You don't care about, like, the history of this world of, like, shitty people. And when you do learn shit, you kind of just want it to all end. Like, you just, like, you realize, hey, these shitty people, they were extra shitty. These uninteresting people, they're still uninteresting. Like, none of it, gets better. Like, the show never, like, progresses to, like, a point where it's like, wow, I'm glad I watched that show. Aesthetically, I don't like the way it looks very often. I think they take a lot of, like, cheap cuts with their animation and stuff like that, especially in some of the action sequences. I don't like the character designs. I think they all look like weird, like, Precious Moment dolls, almost like Trinity Blood. But it's just, like, and then you get to, like, there's some sort of interesting developments toward the end, toward, like, the big climax and, like, the big reveals of what's going on, but by then it is so late that you just don't care. And I would be very glad if I don't have to sit through From the New World ever again, because I like strong, interesting characters, or characters that are so bizarre that you're really interested in them, you know, like Haruhara Haruko from Fooly Cooly. You know, so bizarre that she's really interesting. Nobody here is bizarre enough, nobody here is interesting enough, and you don't care about anything that happens. So that's just, like, a recipe for disaster. And then, like, when they reveal stuff to you along the story, it's a lot of just people sitting and talking for a long time, which is not very entertaining, in my opinion. But if you like From the New World, the Shinsekai Yori, I'm sure you're going to let me know. If you like any of these other series, please let me know and tell me how wrong I am down below. I get it. Maybe you just like it for the sheer entertainment. There's an irony that the guy that actually recommended me to do this list, I know he's a fan of Future Diary, so I hope he doesn't hate me forever. but we've talked about it before. Yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.